That morning when I entered the lawyer's office, I was carrying Michael's handkerchief tucked inside my sleeve. It was pure habit, I suppose. He used to say I was always ready to dry someone else's tears. I thought that day I would shed. My own, not from sadness, but from the weight of everything we built together. 47 years. A house we paid for little by little, vacations carefully planned, a son we raised with everything we had. Andrew was already there, waiting outside the office where the meeting would take place. He looked elegant, expensive. That was the word that came to my mind, expensive. A dark gray suit, impeccable, and a watch I had never seen before. He didn't look like my little boy. "Good morning, Mom," he said without much spirit. Not rude, but not warm either. "Sophia and I have already spoken with Mr. Reynolds." I smiled and reached for the handle of the door. He stepped in front of me. "This is a family matter, Mom. We'll tell you later." I thought I had misheard. I blinked, then let out a soft, nervous laugh. "What do you mean? A family matter, sweetheart." "I am the family." His expression didn't change. "Let us handle this. You don't have to worry about the legal details." And then he closed the door, not loudly, not rudely, just the click of wood meeting wood. I stood there for a moment, staring at the bronze handle, waiting for it to turn, for someone to open it and say it had been a mistake. But it didn't open. I turned around and walked down the hallway, each step sounding too loud. The building smelled of lemon and old paper, but all I could smell was the scent of shame. When I reached the car, my hands were trembling. I gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. He hadn't even hesitated, not a second of doubt. When I got home, I didn't cry. I poured myself a cup of tea. I sat down in Michael's chair. The house was quiet, too quiet, as if it were waiting to see what I would do next. And for the first time in my life, I realized I had no idea what that would be until I opened the drawer of the side table and my fingers brushed the edge of a brass key. I did not sleep that night. I stayed in bed with my eyes open, watching the ceiling move from dusk to shadows and then to the light of the moon. The house felt different, empty, but not because of grief. Grief has weight, but this was coldness. After midnight, I got up and walked barefoot to Michael's knitstand. The drawer always stuck a little, and I opened it carefully as if touching something sacred. Inside, beneath a faded divider and a broken watch strap, was the brass key to the vault. He had given it to me 2 weeks before he passed. "Open it only if you see who they really are," he had said, his voice weak but firm. I remember I smiled and put it away, thinking he was being overly cautious. Now I was no longer smiling. By morning, I was already dressed and sitting in the parking lot of Valley Bank, the same one we had used for 30 years. The manager recognized me, called me Mrs. Vaughn, and asked how I was coping with everything. I nodded politely. He led me through a narrow hallway to a private vault. Box 41 was heavier than I expected. Inside, there were only 3 things: a large sealed envelope with my name written in Michael's handwriting, a USB drive with a single word on the label, Marianne, and a thin, worn envelope with a note that said, "Use it if they forget who you are." My hands trembled as I took them out, the sharp edges pressing against my fingers. In the car, I didn't start the engine. I just sat there, the envelope in my lap, the key on the console, and one thought circling over and over. He knew. Michael had seen something I hadn't, or maybe something I had refused to see. I took everything home, placed it carefully on the kitchen table, and turned on the kettle. My hands moved by instinct, spoonfuls of tea, boiling water, but my mind was elsewhere, because if Andrew had forgotten who I was, I had been given everything I needed to remind him. I had just spread butter on my toast when the doorbell rang. 2 people were standing on the porch, immaculate, smiling, holding tablets and clipboards. "Hello," the woman said cheerfully. "We're here for the showing. Your son said it was fine for us to arrive a little early." My mouth opened, but no words came out. "The showing?" I finally asked. She glanced at her screen. "Yes, 134 Sun Avenue, right? This is it." I nodded slowly, unable to trust my own voice. They walked past me as if I didn't exist. I watched their backs as they toured the house I'd cleaned the night before. They admired the natural light in the dining room, praised the kitchen layout, took notes. I followed from a distance, my pulse pounding behind my eyes. The living room shelf had been rearranged. The framed photo of Michael was gone, replaced by a generic painting of a lighthouse. The armchair where I drank tea every night had been turned at an odd angle, a colorful blanket thrown over it like a disguise. Down the hall, the guest room door was slightly ajar. Inside, the bed was made too perfectly. The closet half empty. On the floor, a plastic storage bin with laminated instructions from a real estate agency I didn't recognize. Then I saw a paper taped behind the guest room door. Checklist for showings. Mrs. Sophia Vaughn, my daughter-in-law, had been here. I walked slowly back to the kitchen. I sat down and stared at the table as if it could speak to me. My toast had gone cold. The kettle had stopped whistling long ago. They hadn't just closed a door on me yesterday. They had silently erased me from my own life. They were already moving forward, reorganizing, packing my memories into sellable pieces, but the key to the vault was still in my pocket. And the folder with Michael's handwriting was upstairs on the desk, waiting. And I was done pretending not to notice what they were taking from me. I waited until nightfall. The house was still. The kettle whistling softly on the stove, steam rising in thin threads. I took the USB to the study, closed the door, and plugged it into the laptop Michael used to write birthday cards and shopping lists. The screen flickered once, and then his face appeared, older, thinner, color drained from his cheeks, but his eyes were clear, alive. He was still him. "If you're watching this," he said, "it's because..." And then I froze. His voice had weight, as if he were speaking directly to the moment I was living. At first, I didn't want to believe it, he continued, looking slightly off screen. But Andrew and Sophia have been making moves transferring money behind our backs, holding discreet meetings with lawyers. I overheard them talking to Charter Systems, your Group 3, built by XAI, discussing a new deed. They've been planning it, Marianne. They planned it while I was still breathing. He looked up again. They've talked about your memory, whispering things like, "She's getting slower," or "Maybe it's time we step in." But I've seen you, my love. You're not fading. They're just repositioning you from person to burden, from owner to occupant. I covered my mouth with my hand. "I updated the will," he said. "It's in the safe. Everything is yours, not out of vengeance, but out of protection. You'll need more than papers, Marianne. You'll need more courage than advice." He leaned slightly forward, his eyes shining through the screen. "Don't let them mistake your kindness for weakness. And don't let them sell your story before you finish telling it." The video ended there, no goodbyes, just the silence of the study returning. As if it had been holding its breath the entire time, I leaned back in Michael's chair, my tea untouched. My mind was racing. But something steadier was forming beneath the panic, a kind of steel I hadn't felt in years. I closed the laptop carefully, walked to the hallway, and turned on the porch light. The wind had picked up. The leaves danced on the wax of the candles, small reminders that even the quietest things can change everything when their time comes. The next morning, I called the number Michael had written on the envelope marked, "Use it if they forget who you are." A woman answered quickly, but kindly, and transferred me to the line of Walter Collins. He didn't ask questions, only said, "I was expecting your call," and gave me an appointment time. His office was in a brick building near the courthouse, quiet and formal. I wore my navy blouse and the scarf Michael had bought me for our 40th anniversary. I needed something of him close to my skin. Walter was older than I imagined, with thin glasses resting at the bridge of his nose, and a warmth in his eyes that made me feel grounded. He didn't offer condolences, just a nod and a gesture for me to sit. "Everything is in order," he said, opening a thick leather folder. Michael was meticulous. He explained everything, piece by piece. The updated will, notarized, signed, dated, all in my name. With only a conditional trust for Andrew. A sealed and signed medical report confirming that Michael was of sound mind. Bank statements with withdrawals and transfers highlighted that I'd never authorized. lines of credit open under my name, and photographs. Clear, undeniable photos of Andrew and Sophia with a real estate agent, touring a senior living residence, smiling as if they were picking out wallpaper. I couldn't speak. My hands trembled as I looked at them. They planned it quietly, Walter said. Enough to get ahead of you. But they underestimated one thing. I looked up. You. I leaned back slowly, exhaling for the first time in days. They're going to fight, he said gently. They'll make noise, but the law is on your side. The question is, do you want to fight? I didn't answer right away. Instead, I took the brass key from my bag and placed it on the table between us. I've already started, I said. Walter smiled, then slid the folder toward me and said, let's make sure they don't rewrite a story that was never theirs to begin with. Andrew called the next night, cheerful as if nothing had happened. Hi, Mom, he said. Sophia and I thought it would be good to meet this weekend just to go over everything, make things easier for you. I agreed without hesitation. My voice sounded warm, steady. Sunday is fine. He didn't know that I had already spoken with Walter. He didn't know that I had the will, the folder, the truth. On Sunday, I put on Michael's favorite blouse, dark blue with pearl buttons. I braided my hair the way I used to when Andrew was little and tugged on my sleeves. I baked rolls, not because they would eat them, but because I wanted something warm in the room, something made with my own hands. Andrew and Sophia arrived 5 minutes late, carrying coffee cups and smiles. They entered the dining room like consultants before a presentation. Mom, Andrew said, laying down his papers, this won't take long. We've already resolved almost everything. Sophia added, we even got you a pre-approval. It's a beautiful place garden view, privacy, plenty of light and security. They handed me a brochure filled with pictures of smiling seniors bathed in soft lighting. And a floor plan marked in blue ink. Andrew pushed a document toward me. We just need your signature here. We've already scheduled a tour. I nodded. Then I took the folder from my blue handbag and placed it carefully on top of their stack. What's this? Sophia asked, something that should have been part of your plan. I said. I opened it slowly. First the notarized will, then the bank documents, then the photos. I watched their faces change. Andrew's forehead tightened. Sophia's color drained away. This is everything, I said calmly. Michael left it for me. He trusted that I know when to use it. Andrew looked from the papers to me, disbelief flickering behind his practiced composure. He opened his mouth, then closed it again. They thought they were leading me to the finish line. But I was already several steps ahead, still. While they were running toward a door that would no longer open for them, I took one last document from my bag. Andrew's expression shifted quickly, from confusion to disbelief to something colder. This is sabotage, he said sharply. You let someone poison your mind. Sophia leaned forward, grabbing the will. This isn't even valid. Where did you get this? Who put you up to this? I didn't flinch. I didn't raise my voice. I had waited too long for this moment to waste it on shouting. No one put me up to anything, I said quietly. Michael prepared it all. The will, the medical evaluations, the bank records. Every page was his idea. Andrew leaned back in his chair. You don't understand what you're doing. We're trying to take care of you. I looked at him, really looked at him. No, Andrew, I said. You're trying to control me. There's a difference. I opened the forged loan documents toward him. But I found out. And now everyone else will too. They didn't leave in anger that would have required conviction. They just stood up slowly, gathered their papers except for the ones I kept, and walked out stiffly. Like guests who had overstayed their welcome, I didn't follow them to the door. That night, I changed the locks. The locksmith came within an hour and didn't ask questions, called the utility companies, and put every account back in my name. I gathered every bill and password and sat at the table until everything was mine again. Before bed, I took a silver label from the drawer and stuck it onto the mailbox right above the slot. Vaughn, owner. The next morning, I opened all the windows. The air smelled of something new, but not unfamiliar. I brewed coffee strong and sweet and stood by the sink, watching the light shift across the garden. For years, I had softened myself for others. But now I knew I didn't need to be louder, only clearer. And clarity was power. The hallway still smelled faintly of lemon oil and dust when I took the frame down from the wall. It was Andrew's graduation photo, him wearing Michael's tie and me with my proudest smile. I didn't cry. I didn't even sigh. I just wrapped it in brown paper and placed it in the drawer beneath the shelf of tablecloths. I wasn't erasing him. I was making space in the empty spot. I hung a watercolor I had painted the week before. My first class at the community center had left my hands speckled with cobalt and ochre. I had forgotten how much I loved color for its own sake. I learned to cook again, but this time for one. I gave with intention, served with care, ate from the good plates, the ones I used to save for parties. Every Tuesday, I went to class. Every Saturday, I bought a new kind of tea just to try it. People noticed. Mrs. Lopez, 2 houses down, stopped me on the sidewalk. "You look lighter," she said, as if surprised. I smiled and thanked her. She didn't need to know why Dot at the start of April. The tulips bloomed along the fence Michael had built when Andrew left for college. One opened first bright yellow, unapologetic. It had always been Michael's favorite color. He said it reminded him of possibility. That morning, a letter arrived. The handwriting was unmistakable. I didn't open it right away. I set it on the counter, poured myself tea, and sat with it as if it were a silent guest. Eventually, I unfolded the paper, just one line. "If you're willing, I'd like to talk." I stared at it for a long time. I wasn't angry, nor softened, just still. I folded it again and slipped it between the pages of the notebook where I kept recipes and watercolor notes. I didn't reply yet. No, the silence of the house had changed. It no longer echoed. It settled. And when the next envelope came, weeks later, I recognized the handwriting before touching it. The call came on a Thursday afternoon. I was folding kitchen towels and listening to a jazz station on the radio when I saw his name on the screen. I let it ring once before answering. "Hi, Mom," Andrew said. His voice sounded smaller than I remembered, softer maybe. Or maybe it was me who had changed. "I'm not calling about the house," he said quickly, "or the will. I know I lost that. I've just been in therapy. Sophia and I separated. I've had time to think, and I realized I don't know who you are now." I didn't speak right away. I let the silence stretch, a bridge he'd have to cross on his own. "I don't want anything," he added. "No money, no rights. I just want to understand you again." When my voice came, it surprised me with its calm. "Then start here," I said. "Not with what you want to fix, but with who I am now. Not the mother you remember, the woman you forgot to see." He didn't interrupt. For the first time, he just listened. We spoke again the next week. He told me about his sessions, about what he was learning about himself. I told him about watercolor class and how I was getting better at shading light through glass. We didn't talk about the house. Not once. He didn't ask if I'd changed my mind, and I didn't ask if he regretted everything. Some calls were short. Others lasted an hour. Sometimes they were soft, cautious laughs, like small animals stepping into sunlight after a storm. I didn't know where it would lead. I didn't need to. What mattered was that he was calling not to take, not to fix, but to witness. One night I hung up the phone and found myself smiling at the silence that followed. It no longer felt empty. It felt earned. And that night, for the first time in years, I opened Michael's desk drawer and took out the notebook where I had started writing my own story. Spring arrived slowly, as if apologizing. The garden was already overflowing tulips, hyacinths, even the old lavender bush, which hadn't bloomed properly in years, had decided to come back to life now. I took my tea on the porch almost every morning barefoot. Wrapped in Michael's flannel robe, the one I once thought I'd put away forever, but most days I spent at his desk. The surface had new, tiny scratches, marks where my pen had paused mid-thought. I liked that. It meant something was happening. The open notebook had grown thicker with pages, lines drawn by a steadier hand than I thought I still had. On the first page was a working title, The Silent Room. I wasn't writing to publish. I wasn't writing to prove anything. I was writing because I needed to reclaim my story. They had tried to erase me so softly with smiles, polite decisions, discreet signatures filed away in back offices. They called it transition, care, simplification. But I still had the pen. I wrote about the house, not his property, but his memory. I wrote about Michael's voice in the quiet, the weight of teacups, and the sharpness of betrayal. I wrote about how a woman can spend her whole life giving and still have to fight just to be allowed to stay. One afternoon, while tending the new herbs by the fence, word of a neighbor across the street approached. She carried a cake in one hand and pointed at the folder on the porch table with the other. "What are you writing these days?" she asked. I smiled and patted the table. "My story," I said. "It's not about revenge." She tilted her head. "Then what is it about?" "About not disappearing in silence." That night, I sat again and wrote one more line. They didn't expect her to speak. They didn't even expect her to stay. But they forgot she still had a name and it was on the deed. I looked up from the page, listened to the soft creak of the wind through the shutters, and felt the house breathe with me. It no longer echoed. It remembered